YouTube channel. So in this video we're going to look at genetics. So before I start, let me just inform you that offering tuitions for biology at only 100 kwacha for GCE and 120 for internal. So you can just WhatsApp me on 0968014743 big chat. So let's start with this question. So genetics is an important topic that always comes in an exam, so just make sure that you revise. So the question is saying a man who had normal vision married a woman also with normal vision. So we have normal. So we have normal as well as normal. So they had the color blind son. So someone who is normal and someone who is normal. How is it possible? Normal having a color blind son. So let's see. So the question continues. Color blindness is a sex linked. So using alleles x to the power b and x to the power small letter b. This is capital letter and this is small letter, isn't it? So before I answer the questions, I'm going to explain. So the first one is saying predict the genotype of the man and his wife. So genotypes are represented by alleles like AA, or we can say capital letter B and small letter b. So now here we are talking about sex linked, meaning we are going to focus on the sex chromosomes. Okay. Then question B saying draw a genetic diagram to show how this was possible. So before I give you the answers for question A, there's one thing that you need to know. A male who is a man has the sex chromosome that is X and Y. So let me use capital letter Y. So from there, one thing that you need to know is that X chromosome is longer than the Y chromosome, or you can say Y chromosome is shorter than the X chromosome. So that is the difference between X and Y. Then for the female, sex chromosome. So here we're talking about sex chromosomes, right? Okay. So for the female, we have X and X. That is one thing that needs to know. So now when you talk of sex linked, this one is coming from sex linked characteristics. Okay, like green color blindness, which is the one that we are talking about. So for sex linked characteristics, you talk of the occurrence of a non-sex gene on the sex chromosome. So we have this sex chromosome. So when there is the occurrence on this sex chromosome, or let me say when there is the occurrence of a non-sex gene on this X chromosome, specifically on the X chromosome, that is called the X-linked. So there is no Y-linked. So meaning to say, sex-linked characteristic or sex-linked disorders, they only occur on the X chromosome. Now we know to say that a male has Y and X, or X and Y. So meaning to say on the Y, you're not supposed to include anything. So if a man is affected, how do you show that? So one thing that you need to understand first, you need to understand the recessive. What are recessive alleles? So for the recessive alleles, they are less powerful, they are overshadowed by the dominant. And these, usually we use small letters. So when you see a small letter, like the one which is this one having, that is a recessive. Then when you talk of a dominant, usually for dominant alleles, we use capital letters like capital letter B, capital letter A. So these, they represent the dominant. So dominant is more powerful than the recessive. So when you have two things like capital letter B and small letter b, since B is more powerful, so it is going to overshadow small letter b. So capital letter B is going to be out, it's going to be shown out. So if a man is affected, or if a male is affected, how do you show that? We are using small letter b, that is X to the power small letter b, then you say Y. On the Y it doesn't occur. What about the female? When the female is affected, how do you show that? It is X to the power small letter b, X to the power small letter b. So this shows that the male or the female is affected. Now in this case here, the question is saying both they are normal. So for the normal male, we need to have x to the power b, then y. What about the female? The female, we can have x to the power b, x to the power b. But remember, the question is saying they are the blind son. So for them to have a blind son, and we know the fact that the female or the wife has to have XX, isn't it? So meaning to say, for them to have a color blind son, the wife has to be a carrier. So a carrier looks something like this. We need to have capital letter B first, which is going to be shown out. Then small letter b. Since small letter b is not more powerful than capital letter B, so this one is going to be called as a carrier. So a carrier is a person who carries a certain disease but is not affected. That is one thing that you need to know. So here the question is saying we need to predict the genotypes of the man and his wife. So since the man is normal, we need to say x to the power b, then y. This is capital letter. Don't write small letter, meaning if you write small letter, meaning the man is affected. What about the wife? The wife is going to have x to the power b, then x to the power b. Now capital letter and small letters. So question B is saying we need to show how this was possible. So you just need to use these alleles that we have come up, these genotypes that we have come up with. So the steps in drawing a genetic diagram. The first thing, you need to start with the phenotype, which is an outward appearance of a living organism. So on the genotype here, you specify we have a man crossed with the wife. Okay. Then the next point or the next step is the genotype. If you remember very well, genotype we use alleles. So the man is having the allele of, or the sex chromosomes of this and that. For the wife, we have x to the power b, then x to the power b, now small letter. What is the next step? The next step here, we need to split the gametes. Okay, so the next step, we need to split the gametes. So we are splitting this so that we have x to the power b like this. Then here we are splitting this so that we have, let me use capital letter Y, so that we have this. Then even here I'm splitting this so that we have that. Even here I'm splitting this so that we have that. So from there, what follows next is the random assortment or random fertilization. So this is when our fertilization is going to occur. So fertilization, now you want to see what you are going to have after crossing these. So let me just close. So this one is going to be crossed with this. Then what are we going to have? X to the power b. Again x to the power b. Then this is going to be crossed with this. Then we are going to have x to the power b. So you need to start with a dominant one, then with a recessive one. Then this is going to be crossed with that. So we are going to have x to the power b, then y. Always need to start with x. Then this and that, you need to start with x for a male. So we have x to the power small letter b, and then y. So what we have, these, they are alleles. So what do we call this stage? This one we call F1, which is filler 1 genotype. Since they are alleles, so it is going to be filler 1 genotype. Then the next stage or the next step is going to be F1. Now here we need to specify now, is it normal or someone is having color blindness? So this one is called F1 phenotype, where now you specify the outward appearance of a living organism. So since we're having BB, meaning this one is going to be a normal. Since it is XX, it's a female. So I'm just going to say female. Then this one is a female, but it's having capital letter B and small letter b. So when you're having small letter, capital letter B and small letter b, that is a carrier, isn't it? So we're going to have a carrier. So of course it's a norm. She's normal, but she's just a carrier of that certain disease which is color blindness. So carrier female. So there is no carrier male. A male can't be a carrier. Then this one we have capital letter B, meaning this is the normal male. So let me just use M. Then since we have a small letter b, meaning this one is going to be a blind son, because when you talk of sex-linked characteristics, they are caused by recessive alleles and they occur on the X chromosome, not on the Y chromosome. So this is the blind son. So at least we have one son who is blind. So we can also find the probability, because we are looking at the possibilities here. If the question was saying find the chances, you need also to find the probability. Now let me also show how to find the probability of this family having a blind son. So we have one child who is blind, then the total number of offsprings here that we have is 4. Then you multiply by 100%. Then what is going to be the answer? We are going to have 25%. So this is the chance of this family to have a son or a child who is color blindness, which is 25%. So let's see the last questions. Question C. One of the causes of color blindness is mutation. It defines mutation. So mutation can be defined as the sudden change in the number of chromosomes or in the structure of a gene. Okay, so we can say it can be permanent, but we are just going to say the sudden change in gene structure. So it can be the sudden change in gene structure. Apart from the sudden change in gene structure, it can be also change in the number of chromosomes. So this is very, very important to understand. Okay, so in talk of the number of chromosomes, we know to say that somatic cells. So let me talk about somatic cells. So somatic cells, which are body cells, they have 46 chromosomes. So if there is a change in the somatic cells, let's say for example, if someone is having 47 chromosomes, meaning to say this person is going to have what we call the Down syndrome. Down syndrome is where now a person is having more than, or is having 47 chromosomes in the somatic cells. We also have Turner syndrome, we also have trisomy 21, so all those things. And also Klinefelter. Then let's see the last question. Explain one cause of mutation. So mutation can be caused by mutagens. So mutagens, they are chemicals that causes mutation. Okay, so mutation can be caused by chemicals. Now these chemicals, they are mutagens. So examples of chemicals like cigarette smoking. If you are smoking cigarette, there is a chemical called tar, that one can cause mutation. Then apart from that one, we also have exposure to radiation. So exposure to radiation, I'm going to explain what exposure to radiation, how exposure to radiation can cause mutation. Exposure to radiations. So this radiation including UV, ultraviolet. Apart from that one, exposure to radioactive elements. So radioactive elements. Okay, so that is very, very important to understand. So that's so for this video. Thanks for watching and remember to subscribe.